Hello everybody, my name's Sammelons, and today we're going to be looking at OverSimplified. I have watched some of his videos in the past. It's pretty funny. I like his style of animation, everything he does. He's one of my favorite channels actually. I've been on the sort of like, if you know me personally, you know that I really like history, and like especially World War II, but I mean, today we're going to be looking at the American Revolution by OverSimplified, which is basically like, it's gonna be like animation, but in a really funny way. You guys are gonna like it, I bet. As an American, I feel like I know quite a bit about the American Revolution, as I am taught it in school. But let's just see let's see OverSimplified's take on it. I messed up. I tried to do a thing, but no. Okay, here. I have closed captions on, so if you guys need to read it, there you go.
Holy smokes! Christopher Columbus, that is no way to address the King and Queen of Spain. What is wrong with you? Okay, so you know how we're looking for a new trade route to India, right? Right. And the Earth is round, right? Right. So I'm thinking we can just sail the other way around the planet, right? Yeah. So I set sail, right? Mm-hmm. And I reach India, right? Right. Wrong. Wrong. I did not reach India. I did not. Alright, no, alright, get to the point.
I like the style of animation. If you guys haven't watched OverSimplified ever, his style of animation is pretty cool. It's like kind of basic, but I mean, that's kind of hypocritical coming from me. Go check out my other videos. They're animations.
Did you know there's a whole nother freaking continent out there?
Actually,
okay, and do you think I should care about this? Why? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I forget to mention there's gold everywhere? Gold? Columbus?
Yeah, there's gold everywhere. I'm pretty sure in like California and some of the other states, there was like the gold rush, if you know about that. It's like everyone was looking for gold, so like everyone could become rich, and it was like insane. And there's like ghost towns now where everybody left because there was no gold.
Columbus landed in Central America in October 1492, and he had the time of his life. And by that I mean he went on a huge theft and murder spree. He stole gold, jewelry, people.
A huge theft and murder spree. That sounds horrible. I mean, they're not wrong though.
And a hammock. And then he returned to show off all of his riches, including a few previously undiscovered items such as tobacco, the pineapple, turkeys, and a hammock.
I like pineapple. Thank you, Christopher Columbus, for introducing pineapple to the old world. I don't think they could have lived without pineapple. Just don't introduce it to Italy, because they'll put it on pizza. They'll put it on pizza and they'll ruin it.
Now I know what you're thinking, but OverSimplified, Columbus didn't discover America, the Vikings did.
Yep.
And you'd be partially right. In the 11th century, Leif Erikson was the first European to land in America.
Newfoundland.
But hey, if you love Vikings so much, then why?
Yeah, it's a part of Canada. It's called Newfoundland. Newfoundland. I don't know. But it's now part of Canada. But it was discovered by the Vikings. I don't know his name. But yeah, he discovered them.
Why don't you check out today's sponsor? Vikings War of Clans is a mobile game that was inspired by the famous strategy and art. Constantly changing the way the game evolves by never-ending fighting over resources, forging new alliances, and competing in live events. Support my channel by downloading Vikings for free, only from my links in the description box below, and get the special bonus of 200 gold coins and a protective shield. Don't forget to look me up and join my Vikings clan under my nickname, OverSimplified. Now where was I? Oh yeah, Columbus, time of his life, hammock. And suddenly the race was on.
That was a paid advertisement, sorry about that. I don't want to edit more things since I edited a bunch today, but that was an advertisement. I don't condone,
on to explore and conquer the New World. After a couple centuries of warring with the natives and each other, the European powers had claimed quite a lot of land, including this area.
The British part are the 13 original ones, and France is all over there.
Which both the English and the French claimed as theirs. One day the French said, I'm going to build some forts along here. And the English were like, could you not? And the French said, sorry, but no, I could not. And they went ahead and built their forts, which pissed off the English. So they sent an up-and-coming British lieutenant colonel by the name of George Washington with a combined force of British troops and Native Americans. After a short battle, the French commander said, all right, we surrender. Okay, boys, pack it up. They're surrendering.
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry, was I not meant to split his head open with a tomahawk? Don't worry, it's not like this will start a 7-year-long major global conflict. And what happened next was a 7-year-long major global conflict, which Great Britain won. At the peace negotiations, Spain gave up Florida, while France gave up all of its territories in North America. But
see, everyone, hang on, let me go back to that. All these borders in the east coast of the U.S. were the original colonies, which were, I don't know all of them, but those were the original boys. I think Delaware's right there, which is our capital.
Florida, well, France gave up all of its...
It's right there, which is... Delaware's the first state, but then, our capital is down there, which is between Maryland and New Jersey.
Territories in North America. But Britain's
know
victory
my
came at a
geography.
cost, a £60 million cost.
geez,
They were now
my-
broke, in a lot of
actually
debt, and had to come up with some way to repay it. So they went to the colonies and said, okay, listen up. So a huge part of the war was spent protecting you from the French, and now we have no
Yeah,
money
well,
because of it.
taxes.
So... I'm not sure what you're saying here. Okay, so we spent a lot of money protecting you from the French, right? Right. And now we're broke. That certainly is a pickle. Listen to me. We spent
It
all
is
of
a
our money
pickle.
protecting you, and now we need money.
I like how it's weird how like the country's talking. Like shouldn't the leaders talking? I feel like that'd make more sense.
Can you please
Like
pay
if
us
they're
back
saying
some
leader, I
money?
think about it.
No.
King.
Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and tax you. In 1764,
taxes.
Britain introduced the Sugar Act, forcing the colonists to import sugar and molasses exclusively from the British and to pay duties on them. Then a year later, they introduced the extremely controversial Stamp
Ooh,
Act,
that's what
and
they
it
just
worked a
thought.
little something like this. Hello, shopkeep. Hello, Mr. Bungleberry. Here's the deed for your new shack. Stamp. That'll be 3 pence, please. Wait, what was that? It's the new tax. I get a stamp on any paper or documentation I make, and you have to pay for it. Would you like to see this pamphlet that explains everything? Yes,
Stamped
please.
it-
Okay.
stamped act
Stamp.
you.
2 pence, please. This is awful. You know what? Just give me a deck of cards so I can go gamble my pain away. Okay. No. Don't do it. Stamp. Obviously, the colonists were like, hey, my dudes, this new tax legislation right here, this is BS. Until now, they had enjoyed relative freedom to rule
Sanitary
themselves, and now
neglect.
suddenly Britain was asserting its control. They were especially unhappy because they didn't have any representatives in the parliament that was levying taxes on them. So they protested. Orators gave fiery speeches. British goods were boycotted, and anyone loyal to the British found themselves increasingly harassed. The whole thing actually began to take quite a toll on British business, and after just a couple years, the British were forced to repeal the Stamp Act.
Yay,
But we still
America.
desperately need money. What should we do? We could try taxing the colonies. Great idea. Wait, didn't we literally just try that and it failed miserably? Man, look at me. I look fabulous. Have you ever seen such a handsome boy?
Wait, look at the
Miserably?
caption.
Man,
So Georgie,
look
don't
at
get
me.
frisky.
I look fabulous.
Right there, Georgie, don't get frisky. I love closed captioning because it's like there's on YouTube. Could do whatever you want.
Have you ever seen such a handsome boy? No sirree, Georgie. No way.
So
You're the
handsome.
handsomest, smartest, most popular king that ever lived, and everybody likes
He's
you.
the worst
You're
king
doing
because
such a
he
great
made
job.
us go.
Your Majesty? Oh, you're still here. Get the hell out. So in 1766, the British made a declaration saying, we can do what we want because we're in charge and you can all go suck it. Then they levied a whole bunch of new taxes on the Americans via import duties. Glass? There's a tax for that. Lead? There's a tax for that. Paper? Tea? Oil? There's a tax for that. And once again, the Americans boycotted British goods, British business felt the pinch, and the British had to back down. Alright, this is
Damn,
ridiculous.
another
They're my
legislation
colonies,
failed.
and I have to be able to assert my control. Repeal all the new taxes except for the one on tea. Also send 1,000 troops to Boston to take control.
Boston
Oh,
Tea
and make
Party
the colonists
happened.
pay for them. And as British troops arrived, the tension in Boston was palpable. You could cut it with a knife, and it was all about to come to a head. On March 5th, a band of local patriots began heckling a British guard at the customs house. More and more Americans joined in the heckling, while more British troops turned up in support of their comrade. Snowballs were thrown at the British. The snowballs turned to rocks, the rocks to oyster shells. The soldiers, outnumbered, panicked. One thing leads to another, and you can see where this is
The
going.
shot heard around the world, right?
5 civilians were killed. The Patriot press throughout the colonies
was-
declared the Boston Massacre an unwarranted crime committed against the people of
I'm
Boston
pretty sure that's called the shot heard around the world.
by the cruel British, and the anger continued
Wait,
to
or was that
grow.
something
A
else?
British
I'm not sure
revenue
what that
schooner
was.
that ran aground
I
in
think
Rhode
that was something
Island
with
was
the
burned by the
American British,
locals. When it came to light that the governor of Massachusetts supported the suppression of the colonists, his house was burned by the locals.
Jesus.
And
Imagine if you disagreed with someone, so you burned down their house. Like that's messed up.
next,
bro.
the colonists would set their sights on the remaining tax on tea. On December 16th, 1773, a band of patriots known as the Sons of Liberty disguised themselves as Native Americans,
Oh,
marched
Boston
down
Tea
to
Party,
Boston
here we go.
Harbor, boarded a British merchant ship loaded with tea, and in front of thousands of spectators, threw nearly 10,000 pounds worth of tea overboard. The British were disgusted, and they punished Massachusetts with a vengeance. They dissolved its General
Tea, please drink it quick.
Assembly, revoked their charter, and sent 3,000 more
But then
troops to
every-
occupy the
every-
city, meaning Boston and Massachusetts were now essentially under the direct rule of Great Britain.
Jeez, really.
And oh boy, were the people pissed. The other colonies saw what was happening and worried they might be next. So they called a brain trust to decide what to do. 56 delegates from 12 colonies gathered and met in Philadelphia at the First Continental Congress, and the roll call read like a who's who of America's finest thinkers. I'm talking lawyers extraordinaire Johnny A. and Johnny,
Johnny
J,
J and Johnny
experienced
J.
military
Boys.
commander George Washington, businessman and future alcoholic beverage Samuel Adams.
Future alcoholic beverage. Samuel Adams.
Fiery orator, Patty H. Guy who married a rich lady, Big J. Dickinson. And while they weren't present at the first Congress, soon names like James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and much later Alexander Hamilton would all serve time in the Continental Congress. The question now, though, was what to do about the British. After much bitter debate and disagreement, they eventually agreed on an amazing solution. They would simply ask the British to stop. Can you stop? No. It didn't work. Okay, then tell the local militias to start arming and be...
You know, that's a good attempt. If you're ever, like, getting messed up by someone, just ask them to stop first off. Don't just, like, immediately start doing more.
Ready at a minute's notice. And across the colonies, these Minutemen stood ready for the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. Now, having your colonies in open rebellion is one thing. Once they start arming themselves, that's when it really hits the fan. So...
Shit just hit the fan, bro.
British General Thomas Gage ordered 700 troops from Boston out into the rebel-controlled Massachusetts countryside to destroy stores of arms and ammunition held by the rebels in Concord. The British set out in the middle of the night. Patriots, including Paul Revere, rode ahead to warn that the British were coming, giving the rebels time to
He just called John Revere Jack Black.
prepare. The two sides met in Lexington as the sun began to rise. They faced off against each other, and in the confusion, somebody shot first. The shot heard around...
That's what that is. The shot heard around the world was when they first attacked. That's what that was. I'm sorry about my misconceptions of American history.
Around the world marked the beginning of the American War of Independence. The rebels were outnumbered and had to fall back to Concord as the British split up to search for rebel supplies. However, more and more Patriot rebels kept showing up, and this time it was the British who were outnumbered as more fighting kicked off in Concord. The most professional army in the world was forced to flee back to Boston at the hands of local, poorly trained militiamen, and all along the British rebellion.
Yeah, they were the strongest army in like the entire world at that time. I don't know how they failed. Like, I don't get it. I'm happy though. I don't want to be British. I don't want to have a British accent. That'd be dumb.
Back to Boston, Patriot rebels continued to gather and open fire on the retreating British. When the British reached Boston, the rebel militias surrounded them. Boston and the British were now under siege as small land and naval skirmishes continued around the city. And the British would suffer another embarrassing blow, this time in upstate New York. Colonel Benedict Arnold concocted a plan to take the British stronghold Fort Ticonderoga, which held a large amount of guns and ammunition. He set off towards the fort alone, hoping to recruit men along the way, when he came across the Green Mountain Boys, led by Ethan Allen, who as it turned out, had the exact same plan he did. So they decided to...
His model really bothers me. His face is so strange on his head. It just doesn't look right. Also, I found another way to tell someone's important. You can tell if someone's important, you can see if there are hand drawn or if there's just a circle with eyes.
Work together, but I'm in charge. No, 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 I'm in charge. This went on for some time, until the Green Mountain Boys threatened to go home, and Arnold had to concede. The group raided the fort at night while the Redcoats were asleep, and they caught them completely by surprise, taking the fort and all of its munitions with almost no resistance. Wow, great job, Ethan. Very impressive. By the way, what happened to that other guy we sent to take the fort? Who? Benedict Arnold. Never heard of him.
Aw.
Ouch.
Sad. Benedict Arnold, you'll live on in my heart for your amazing duties to this country.
What the fuck? Nobody knew what was going on. The colonies were in open rebellion, and for now, they even seemed to be winning. So King George fired General Gage, replaced him with General William Howe, and ordered the rebellion to be put down immediately. Okay, the British are definitely going to retaliate for all of this, so we should probably put together a proper army. First, we need to pick a commander-in-chief, and I think we can all agree that that job should go to the man, the myth, the legend, George Washington. My friends, I am humbled and honored that you would consider me for such an important role. I did not expect for this. All right, you've been showing up in a military uniform every day for the last 10 months. We all know you wanted this, so cut the crap, George. Dude. Uncool. So Washington began his journey up to Boston to take command of the newly established Continental Army, just as the British made their first major attempt to break the siege. They made plans to take the high ground on Bunker Hill, but spies warned the Continentals of the British plans, so they fortified Bunker Hill and set up defensive positions on nearby Breed's Hill. The day of the battle came, and as the British advanced, a barrage of Continental gunfire was opened up on them. Twice they tried to climb the hill, twice they were pushed back. The battle lasted 3 hours until the Continentals finally ran out of ammunition and had to retreat, allowing the British to take the hill. While technically a British victory, they suffered nearly 1,000 casualties to the Continentals' 400.
That's
the colonists...
Imagine 1,000 people getting either killed or injured. That's horrible. Even 400, that's so messed up. War is just so dumb.
Showed the British that this wasn't just a rebellion, it was war, and they were ready for it. But one thing they weren't sure about was why they were fighting. While some radicals were starting to throw around the I word, most hoped to eventually repair their relationship with Great Britain. So they sent a letter to King George saying,
I mean, it's repaired now, but I mean, this is like 300 years ago. So yo, it wasn't repaired then.
Hey man, looks like things aren't going your way. Remove the taxes and let's be friends? I'm gonna kick your ass. Send that to the colonies. Your Majesty, your handwriting is terrible. Are you sure? Just do it.
Why would his handwriting be terrible? Isn't the king when he have like the best education? That doesn't really make much sense.
What does it say? He's gonna lick my... Gross. So for the remainder of the year, small engagements continued to occur around the colonies. The British burned down the towns of Falmouth, Massachusetts and Norfolk, Virginia as revenge for earlier anti-British incidents. These actions played right into the hands of patriot propaganda. Overseas, the British were seen as brutes, and the French and Spanish would soon begin sending supplies to the rebel cause. During this time, there was also minor fighting going on between patriot and loyalist militias in the southern colonies. Benedict Arnold was still on a mission to win some personal glory for himself, so he headed up an attempt to invade Canada in a two-pronged attack. The Continentals managed to capture some British forts and the city of Montreal, but a harsh snowstorm with some smallpox on the side saw them defeated and pushed back at
Good
Quebec
attempt,
City,
bro.
and they were
Good
forced to
attempt.
retreat all the way to Fort Ticonderoga. Speaking of which, remember all those guns and ammunition?
All the guns
Well,
and
this guy's got a plan for what to do with
Oh
them.
my god, he looks like such a legend. Look at him.
Ticonderoga. Speaking of which, remember all those guns and ammunition? Well, this
This man looks like such a legend. He looks like he's like a G.
guy's got a plan for what to do with them. He uses oxen to drag 120,000 pounds of artillery for 2 months through the harsh winter, 300 miles all the way to Washington and his Continental Army surrounding Boston. Boom. Washington's got himself some big guns, which is fortunate because up until now his army had been suffering through the cold winter, not knowing when the siege would end. Now, they could make a move. Washington wanted to launch a full assault on the city, but his junior officers felt the British were too fortified, and to his credit, Washington was great at hearing and taking on board
that's
the idea.
why George Washington was like one of the greatest leaders because he listened to people. That's like why other kings and queens failed because they wouldn't listen to other people. They kind of just like go off their own advice and everything and wouldn't take advice from anyone else.
Ideas of others. Instead, the Continentals worked through the night, setting the guns up on Dorchester Heights, overlooking the city, and when dawn broke and the British saw the guns, they knew they were toast. Their positions were completely exposed. It was checkmate. They had no choice but to abandon the city. 120 ships carried 9,000 redcoats and 2,000 loyalists away to an unknown fate, and Washington had his first victory of the war.
Yeah.
Washington then moved his
Georgie.
army to New York, knowing that when the British returned, they would probably land there. In the meantime, a friendly-looking old man by the name of Thomas Paine had written and published a pamphlet called Common Sense, in which he advocated for
No, it's just common sense.
total independence from Great Britain. It spread
I
across
also
the colonies
advocate
like
for
wildfire, and to this day remains the best-selling title in America. It was read aloud in taverns
That's
and meeting
insane.
halls,
Also,
and
proportion to population, but still, that's insane. How everyone just bought it. That's crazy. That's pretty funny. Well, I mean, I don't know why we hate the British so much. It's like at this point too. It's like it's not that we hate them; they just didn't like us becoming independent. So I mean.
brought the idea of
But
independence
still, I never got that. They already control like a fourth of the entire world. So I don't know why they'd be mad about these colonies specifically.
into the mainstream. Congress began to seriously consider the idea. Thomas Jefferson was selected to write up an official Declaration of Independence, and he went hard, writing that all men are created equal, with certain inalienable rights.
Didn't like everyone own slaves though? I never got that because all men are created equal, but slaves weren't abolished until like a lot after that.
Including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, Jefferson had over 100 slaves, but we don't have to talk about that.
Nice. See, yes, I'm right. It's so hypocritical, the Constitution, because like everyone owns slaves. So it's like all men are created equal, but it's like not until Abraham Lincoln.
On the 2nd of July, Congress voted unanimously in favor of independence, and John Adams declared that the 2nd of July would go down as the most remembered day in American history. Then a couple days later, independence actually came into effect. The United States of America was born. There was no turning back now. The Americans tore down a statue of King George in New York and melted him down into 42,000 musket balls.
Jeez,
To the
that's
British,
awesome.
it was treason, and if the king had
They
his
are
way,
beasts for
Washington
that
and
one.
all of Congress would be hung. Speaking of the British, guess who's back? The king sent an intimidating force of 130 warships and 25,000 men to New York.
Brits are back.
Washington knew that taking on the most powerful military in the world wouldn't be easy. The British set up camp on Staten Island as the Americans dug into defensive positions around Brooklyn Heights, waiting for an attack to come. But the British just waited, wearing down their opponent's nerve while building their own strength. At one point, they launched a big scary artillery barrage and then said, you know, if I was you right now, I'd probably sue for peace. But Washington told them to shove it. The Americans kept holding out for what was coming, and when they finally hit, they hit hard. 15,000 British troops approached the American position, and the two sides fired on each other in massive rows. But what the Americans didn't realize was they were only fighting a decoy. The main British force was going around to flank the Americans from
Flanking?
behind,
Oh my
and when they
God,
arrived,
wow.
they inflicted heavy casualties. The Americans panicked and retreated back back to Brooklyn Heights, where they then found themselves trapped between the British Army and the river. It looked as though the war was already lost, but luckily, instead of attacking, the British decided to dig in for a siege, and then a thick fog set in, allowing Washington's army to escape across the river unimpeded. The British continued to chase and engage the Americans at Manhattan, and the Americans suffered defeat after defeat after defeat. It was a disaster. Washington's leadership was called into question, as thousands of American POWs were left to rot as traitors. Washington's army fled through New Jersey all the way down to Pennsylvania. Rarely had an army been so badly beaten, yet survived to fight another day.
Nice. So, yeah, that was part 1 of OverSimplified, the American Revolutionary War. So that was fun. I made an animation, or not animation, like a thing about why America has the strongest military. And it's like, I feel like that really fits in now. So I saw this video, I recommend, and thought it would be cool to watch it after I just made that video. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. I might watch, part 2, like, tomorrow or something. I don't know. But, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm not cutting out the paid sponsorship.